Shay, Ma'at Hotep. This is The Truth May Hurt. My name is Raymond Witcher, and I will be your host. I'm doing a presentation on when is New Year? When does the New Year start? And we're going to look at some more biblical controversies. Okay. All right. First, I need to correct myself regarding Mary Magdalene. I stated that the only people in the Bible with a last name are kings and Mary Magdalene. I was wrong about both. I received an email from a subscriber at this address today who informed me that Mary was from a place named Magdala, and Magdalene isn't her last name. It's to show or say she's from Magdala. The example they gave me was this would be like saying Jesus' last name was Nazareth. I also mentioned that during the time of Jesus, they didn't have pens related to Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. However, I looked it up and the scribe used pens to write on the papyrus paper. So they did use pens, so I need to correct myself. As I have mentioned, and I will mention again, not always right. Okay, so when I mentioned that, let me back up. When I mentioned here that the only last names are kings and Mary Magdalene, I was wrong about the kings too, because the kings aren't called king by their last name. They're called king by their first name, or queen by their first name, like Queen Elizabeth or King Charles or King James. They don't call their last names. So what I'm really pointing out is I need to correct myself, not just that I gave a false fact that the only people with last names in the Bible were kings and Mary Magdalene. I was wrong because there are no people in the Bible that their last names are provided. Okay, so I'm pointing these things out. I'm not trying to make a sermon out of it, but it is very mysterious that an all-knowing God wouldn't know that the people that are going to be presented his word, none of the people doing it, or none of the people in this Bible, none of their last names are provided. Okay, so I wanted to come back and point that out, correct myself, that and tell me what you think. Right? Did you ever think about the Bible? No one in it. You know what their last name is. You can't say Luke with a last name, John with a last name, Paul, Peter, or anybody with a last name, which makes all of them untraceable. Untraceable to everywhere except the Bible. This is where that feedback came from. Regardless of where it came from, thank you very much. Please give me your feedback, all right? I need that, okay? To all who are subscribed and who are just watching, please give your feedback. I need this to improve. I have mentioned that my vision is compromised. And I'm really having problems reading street signs and road signs and those kind of things. So when I'm looking at a lot of these things on the screen, the letters blending together and the lines above and below are blending together. So I'm doing the best I can, and I don't have anyone to help me right now. So please bear with me. I will correct any mistakes that I make. I don't stand on a lie, I stand on the truth. I'm not here to feed anybody lies. I'm here to feed people the truth. So when I am in error, I will make the adjustments. Okay, now what we're going to look at, the question is, when is the real New Year? Okay, or what month is the New Year? Okay, so the New Year once started in March. Okay, first starters, January didn't exist for the ancient Romans. Here's how their calendar evolved to our modern system of time marking. Okay, in the dark days of winter, a new year begins, but January wasn't always the start of the new year. At the dawn of the modern calendar, keeping the winter months went unnamed in the calendar, and in the calendar that gave rise to today's most popular system of marking time. Named after Janus, the god of time, transition, and beginnings. January was an invention of the ancient Romans. Here's the story of the month's wild ride. A tale of astronomical miscalculations, political tweaking, and calendar confusion. The first Roman calendar. Humans have been marking time on calendars for at least 10,000 years. Now, you see here where it says at least 10,000 years? Remember, the biblical teaching of the creation says Earth is only 6,000 years old. So here you have another contradiction to the biblical teachings. If you look up right now, how old is the biblical creation story? It'll tell you 6,000 years old. Well, we've been marking time for 10,000 years. But the methods they use varied from the start. The Mesothelistic people of Britain tracked the phases of the moon. The ancient Egyptians looked to the sun. And the Chinese combined both methods into a lunisolar calendar that's still used today. The modern calendar used in most of the world, though, evolved during the Roman Republic. Though it was attributed to Romulus, a Polites founder and first king, it's likely the calendar developed from other dating systems designed by the Babylonians, Etruscans, and ancient Greek. As Roman scientific knowledge and social structure changed over time, so did their calendar. The Romans tweaked their official calendar several times from the Republic's founding in 509 BC until its dissolution in 27 BC. All right, so what I'm trying to point out here and make a point about the New Year. The New Year before this time was always March. During this time, there were only 10 months. There was no January, there was no February. The 10 months were longer. The 10 months had more days. Okay, so when you think about it, the new year starts in spring, when you see the trees starting to get the buds so that they can get leaves, and you see the new growth coming up out of the soil. When you hear the birds starting to chirp early in the morning because they know it's going to be things for them to eat there because winter is gone and a new year has begun. Okay, the new year is the start of new life. This is when nature tells the animals, it's time for you to breed. It's time for you to conceive. It's time for you to bring new life. Okay, so when they changed this, when the Romans changed this, they added the months. They changed the number of calendar days in a month. They reduced it to create 2 new months, which is January and February. Okay, so January Well, January just ended, and January was cold. We got 8 or 10 inches of snow. This is February, and today we got 6 or 8 inches of snow. There is no new life. Okay, everything is dead. Okay, so we want to understand, and I'm trying to bring out another point. On the previous video, where I showed you when the Greek and the Romans changed and named the days of the week, they changed and renamed because they renamed it. Don't believe the earth is only 6,000 years old and that everything started when white people got here. That's what you have to believe, and that's why I brought this point up right here. That's why I brought this point up right here, that this says for at least 10,000 years, we were marking time. Well, the Bible says that there was nothing here 10,000 years ago, and that nothing had been created in the entire universe. Nothing had been created. And the reason that they are saying this is because the Egyptian records that they copied everything from, they only go back 5,000 or 6,000 years. Okay, they have only been on Earth 6,000 to 8,000 years. Okay, so their story of creation and everything had to start in the last 6,000 years, or they wouldn't be God's first chosen people, and all of this ridiculous stuff that they fabricated. Okay, so I'm pointing out that January didn't exist, February didn't exist. The previous video, I showed you that each of the days of the week, Sunday is representing the sun worshipers or the sun god. That's who Constantine worshiped. He worshiped the sun. Tuesday is named after another god. Wednesday is named after the god Wotan. Thursday is named after the god Thor. Friday is named after the god Freya. Saturday is named after the god Saturn. And if you look at Saturn, Saturn is also where the name Satan came from. Okay, I don't have that in this video, but if you just look it up and verify what I'm telling you, don't believe me, you shouldn't trust anybody. I follow 3 rules in quality assurance. Trust no one but God. Question everybody but God. And rule 3 is very simple. Go back to rule 1 and start over. Okay, so don't trust me. I'm giving you information that is your responsibility to verify. Once you've verified it and you've come up with evidence that you accept is true, then you'll know. But don't know just because I'm telling you, okay? Because I wouldn't believe everything that you told me. I would verify it. By some means, I would verify it, okay? All right, the first iteration was a scant 10-month long, this is what I was telling you, long paid homage to what counted in early Rome society, agriculture and religious ritual. Okay, the 304-day calendar year began in March. March is the Greek name they gave it, and March is named after the Roman or Greek god Martinus. Okay, the Roman god Mars. Okay, so what I'm showing you is all of the, I don't think it's all, but it's in the presentation, I'll get down to it. Most of the months of the year are named after Roman or Greek gods. Okay, the Romans like each year to be the date of the city's founding. Thus, the modern year 753 BC was considered year 1 in ancient Rome. Okay, see, this is when they started this. That was year 1. Okay, Rome's lunar calendar, a 10-month calendar, didn't last long. The 10-month calendar didn't last long though, In the 7th century BC, around the reign of Rome's second king, Pompilus, the calendar received a lunar makeover. The revision involved adding 50 days and borrowing a day from each of the 10 months existing to create a new 28-day-long winter month, Lunarius, honoring the god Janus. Okay, see, here's where they're coming up with these gods. Februarus, honoring February. A Roman purification festival. Okay, this is when everything was being Hellenized. And remember, Hellenization is the removal of all of the natives' history, culture, everything about you. They're going to remove it. And they are going to make it Greek. They're going to make it Roman. And this is where they're doing this here. It was a purification festival, okay, to get rid of all of these things. The new calendar was anything but perfect. Since Rome's believed odd numbers were suspicious. They attempted to divide the year into odd number months. See how crazy they are? Okay, and I'm pointing this out. See how crazy they are? Okay. The only exception was February, which was at the end of the year considered unlucky. There was another issue. The calendar relied on the moon, not the sun. You got to remember, everything up until then was centered around the sun. The S-U-N, not the S-O-N. Everything that was going on before this, well, I'll take that back. Everything in the African culture up until this centered around the sun. The Chinese were centered around the moon. The Romans and the Greek tried to combine the two, and they messed it up. Okay? Right on the moon. Okay, since the moon cycle is 29.5 days, the calendar regularly fell out of sync with the seasons it was intended to mark. Okay? We got to remember something. They were just getting here. They'd only been on Earth. Okay, when is this? This is probably back. They had only been on Earth maybe 5,000 years when they started doing all of this stuff. When these Roman emperors decided we're going to take over the world. We're going to implement Greek life on everybody. And I'll ask you this. Here's an example. When you're in college, in black colleges, when you're in college and you join a fraternity or a sorority and you pledge, what do they call it? They call it Greek culture, right? What is it that the men get, what do they call it? Branded on their arm or on their chest. It is a Greek symbol of an upside down horseshoe. It's a Greek symbol. So we have to get away from accepting Greek culture, point blank, period. We have an African culture that is stronger than any other culture on earth. It's a beautiful culture. Once we learn and start educating our children from the same age that the Catholic Church started saying, if you give us your child from the time they're born to 7 years old, they'll be ours forever. They weren't kidding. Okay, we have to stop that. The way you stop it is stop teaching this Greek culture, this Greek European God, all of these white images and all. Get away from that. It's all made. If you're going to believe this, you should go back to believing Santa Claus, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, We didn't have any of these things before they forced it and implemented it on our ancestors. Okay, let's keep going. Come on, let me see. Here it is. When they changed the months, if you come here, and that's from this page, okay? You come here and you click on what are the 12 months, bring you up here named after, and you can read all of these are named after Roman gods. February. This was named after a purification ritual called February, which occurred on the 15th of that month. Okay, but if you look up who this is, it's a Greek god. March is after a Greek god. Okay, Greek god. Okay, it's only a few months that don't have Greek gods. Okay, here's April, Greek goddess. Here's May, Greek goddess. June, okay, you can read it. I'm not going to say it's a Greek goddess. I think it is, but you have to look a little bit more into this one. But here's the history. Okay, this month is not named after any god or religious rite. All right. Come back and read up on these things. All right. This August was named after Caesar's nephew. Okay, I think he had been an emperor or something. Nephew was, yeah, first emperor of Rome. So that's where August got his name. September. Okay, so that's that. I have for you here. That's that same thing. Okay, here's what I want to go over. We're gonna keep it going. Let me show you what I did, so that you can understand. Osiris and the Egyptian resurrection. The first resurrection, the first god in the European, Greek, and Roman culture was Osiris. Okay? Now, if you really go back and search where the god Osiris came from, where the god Osiris mythology came from, it came from the Egyptian god Haru, capital H, capital H-U-R-U, Haru. But the first European god with a resurrection story was Osiris. And if you come here and you just read it, all right? So Osiris is a central figure in ancient Egyptian mythology, revered as a god of resurrection, fertility, and the underworld. His story involves his death, resurrection, which symbolizes the cycle of life and death. And it became the key aspect of the Egyptian belief in the afterlife. The cult of Osiris emphasized that by participating in his death and resurrection rituals, individuals could ensure their own rebirth in the afterlife. Osiris was also seen as the judge of the dead, embodying the concept of divine kingship, where the deceased king became Osiris in death. This is the Jesus Christ story. But the Osiris story is the Haru story. You see right here where it says it's a central figure in ancient Egyptian mythology, revered as the god of resurrection. When it says is the central figure in Egyptian mythology, it's not going back to the Egyptian mythology of Haru, because this is when the Greek took over. This is when they Hellenized Haru. They just say, hey, this is the first. It's not the first, it's the second. The first is Haru. But you see here, they still have, well, go back here. They still have the Egyptian statue, okay, of a black god. That's not anything European. Okay, so you can come here and read these things. All right, let's see what I have here. That was the Ethiopian calendar. Okay, I needed to come back and edit something in because, and I can't really find the page that I had on my presentation. But if you see here, the Ethiopian calendar, it's not the year 2024, 2025, it's 2017. Okay, so I'm trying to show you the only reason that the Ethiopian calendar is showing 2017 and it's not showing 2025 like the rest of the world calendars, because Ethiopia was never colonized by the Europeans. The Ethiopians kicked their butt. Okay, so that's the reason the Ethiopian calendar is still on the previous calendar system. Okay, I wanted to come back and just show you that this is where I did my search on another Ethiopian calendar, and I said Ethiopian calendar year, and it shows you here, this is the Ethiopian calendar, and Ethiopia is one of the few countries in the world to use its own calendar, a remarkable feature that highlights the nation's distinct culture and historical identity. They see Ethiopia was never colonized, so it was never Hellenized. So they were able to keep their distinct cultural and historical identity. This unique time-keeping system isn't just a relic of the past. It is actively used today. I just showed you it's 2017 in Ethiopia. And the Ethiopian calendar origins trace back to the ancient astronomical observations and Christian traditions. So they were able to hold on to this. So I just wanted to edit this in because I skipped it. And it's very important. If you want to look it up, check it out and look it up. 12 months now, we can get back to the presentation. Okay, so this is when they Hellenized everything. Let me pause and make sure that I'm not skipping anything. Okay, so we're gonna move on. All right, we're almost finished. All right, all of this is centered around the spring. Okay, now we're back to talking about adding January and February and changing the calendar to the Roman and the Greek Hellenization of a calendar. Okay, but everything is all centered around the spring equinox. Easter is centered around the spring equinox. Okay, and has nothing to do with the resurrection of Jesus Christ, even though this is what Christians believe. This is what makes believing so dangerous. You don't need any evidence to believe. And church, the Bible, none of these have given me any evidence. Anytime you ask a question, well, you don't need to worry about that. All you need to do is believe. Okay? That is the biggest scam that has ever been upon the face of the earth. That your creator, the only thing he wants you to do and achieve in life is being able to say that you believe. No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me either. I'm going to answer it for you. All right? We greet the first day of the new season with the spring equinox. But what is it exactly? And why does the first day of spring change? We explain. Okay, they explain here. The first day of spring is March the 20th, 2024, 20th, 2024 at 5:02 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. For those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, this was marked by the arrival of the vernal equinox, which is known as the first point Aries, all right? The first point of Aries. All right, vernal translates to new and fresh. The equinox derives from the Latin equus, which means equal, and nox, which means night. Okay, that's explaining to you equinox, all right? So what does this mean? Essentially, our hours of day and the period of time each day between sunrise and sunsets has been growing slightly longer each day since the winter solstice in December, which is the shortest day of the year, at least in terms of light. Okay, even though we know that after December the 21st, the days start getting steadily longer. I think it's a minute and a half a day. It might be 2 minutes a day. We still see more darkness than light over the course of the day. In those 3 months leading up to spring, the vernal equinox marks the turning point when day begins to win over darkness. Now, if you really, as you start learning, the first battle, and this is, I'm talking, they don't tell you this in the Bible, but the battle between God and the devil and good and evil, the first teaching of it was the battle between dark day and night. During the day, you were safe. You could get things done. You could see everything. Nothing could hide. You could get things done. But boy, when the sun started falling, you better have you a fire to keep the predators away, because this is when most predators, they do most of their hunting at night because it conceals them. You can't see them. Okay? Yeah, some predators hunt. I mean, if the opportunity comes in the day, yeah, they'll kill you because they're not going to turn down an opportunity. But when they spend their energy hunting and turn into the predator looking for the prey, it's after the sun goes down. So the first teaching wasn't of good and bad or evil and good. It was the battle between day and darkness. And when darkness came, you needed to have you shelter to protect you. You needed to have fire that would ward away the predators. So I wanted to bring that up. Okay, so I'm taking you back to before religion was invented. It was the teaching of the battle in between light and darkness. It was the battle in between the sun and the sunset. And what the equinox is basically telling you in this mythology is this is when the day starts winning the battle against the night, the darkness. So if you notice, during the winter months, the darkness is winning the battle, okay? So I'm trying to keep it on a perspective where you can understand the original story, how it evolved to this Christian story. It's all the same story. They just changed the characters. They just changed the way it's told. That's it. Okay. All right, now we're going to get into a couple of biblical controversies, and we're going to shut this down. All right. Matthew 20, verses 21 through 23. Now, this is when, okay, let me read it to you. You can go back and read the previous verses, but this is what Jesus said. What is it you want? He asked. He was talking to this lady, and she said, grant that one of these 2 sons of mine may sit at the right hand and other at your feet in the kingdom. And this is what Jesus says back to her. Do you know what you're asking? Jesus said to them, Can you drink the cup I am going to drink? We can, they said. Jesus said to them, You will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at the right hand or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father. So how is Jesus and God the same? Okay? They're asking Jesus to grant them. This lady is asking Jesus to grant that her sons, one can sit on the right hand and the other on the left in your kingdom. Okay? And he says, do you know what you're asking me? Right? And he says that he doesn't have that authority. So if he's God, why wouldn't he have that authority? If he's God, why couldn't he say permission granted? He didn't. All right. Now here's the question. Is God, Jesus immortal? Okay. Can he be destroyed? Can God be destroyed? Can God die? All right. We're going to go to 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 16, International Version. I think all of these have been the International Version. All right. Whom alone is immortal? Who alone is immortal? And who lives in unpredictable light? Whom no one has seen and can see. Now here he's saying again, no one can see me and no one has ever seen me. To him be honor and might forever. Amen. Right. Who alone is immortal? So how can Jesus be God and die on a cross? Some verses say hung on a tree and died on a tree. All right, Matthew 28, verse 18. Then Jesus came to them and said, All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. If Jesus was God, he wouldn't need God to give him authority. If Jesus is God and the God in heaven and Jesus are one, he wouldn't need God to give him authority. Why would Jesus, who is God, have a God? Okay? I'm not picking it apart. I'm just putting it in the proper context. I'm reading it as it is. But the thing is, you can go to another parts of the Bible and you read something that's totally different from this. Matter of fact, you could probably go to Luke or Matthew, and theirs even might be different. Okay, I'm not saying it is, but there are contradictions throughout the Bible, right? Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8. How can you say, we are wise, for we have the law of the Lord, when actually the lying pen of the scribes has handled it falsely? What is it saying here? You remember I said in the back that I had made a couple of mistakes. One of them was in one of the verses, I can't remember which it was on the previous presentation. I said that when Jesus says that the pen cannot change any letters or anything of the law of Moses. And I said, wait a minute, they didn't have pens back during Jesus' time. What are they talking about? Well, they did have pens, but they weren't ink pens. They were pens that they used to scribe on the papyrus. I'm not going to even say that it wasn't ink because I haven't verified that. But they did use pens. But what is Jesus saying here when he says, we are wise, for we have the law of the Lord? when actually the lying pen of the scribes has handled it falsely. This means that they haven't recorded it accurately. He's saying that it's been distorted, it's been altered. It doesn't say what it's supposed to say. It doesn't say what the Father said. It doesn't say what I've said. He's saying that when actually the lying, and so you got to put that word in it. He's telling you, and falsely, he's telling you it's not accurate. I don't have to make it up. The scribes were altering the scriptures. The Bible has not been protected, and it has been manipulated. Okay, Jeremiah is cursing the scribes. He's saying, hey, you guys prophesizing falsely. I'm cursing you because everybody that believes this, everybody that reads this, you have led astray. That's what he's saying. He's saying that the written word in the Bible has been recorded by lying pens, by the scribes who handled it falsely. Now, what does it tell you? Somebody give me some feedback that I've been showing you. Not just this, but everything. If you're a new subscriber and you haven't seen my previous videos, take a little time and go back and look at everything collectively, because it all builds up who we've been lied to. And it's not in a little isolated thing. It's not something you say, oh, well, yeah, they just made a mistake there. They made a mistake in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. They made mistakes in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. They made mistakes all the way down through it. It's in previous videos. Okay, so this is a lot to absorb. If you're stuck in this thing where the Bible is historical and I believe everything in it word for word, you're in trouble, because it's not going to fulfill itself, because Jesus Christ never existed. Abraham never existed. Moses, all of them are made up characters. And we have just been so indoctrinated and have absorbed so much trauma that our ancestors suffered through so much trauma that if you go back and look at previous videos, this trauma cycle of trauma has never ended. It's just been in one form or one phase or another, but it has never ended. And here's one you can look up for yourself. Go on YouTube and search. Matter of fact, hold on, let me show you. I've shown this before, but this is very important. Okay, this is Dr. Joyce DeGuerre Leary, and she is the top professional. Her degree is in psychology, and she is the most recognized person who did the study on post-traumatic slave disorder. She was on a medical board to define the criteria to be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And they came up with 5 categories. She calls all of this out in this presentation. I'm showing you how to get to her because I really would like for you to watch this. Every black person, and every white person too, but especially every black, should know what she's teaching, because she's teaching how trauma affects not just the person that had the trauma, but the descendants from the person that had the trauma all the way down, okay? And what she's pointing out is when she was on this medical board to set up the definitions and the criteria to be diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, she told the director, wait a minute, Black people have all 5 categories. We have all of these post-slavery. And he said, no, well, we can't diagnose all Black people with PTSD. So by her being a professional and by her having the credentials to do a study to prove it, that's what she did. So she did a study with mice, where she kept them in a cage, and every day they would run the mice from one cage into another container and then induce the smell of peppermint. And when the smell of peppermint got in the cage, they would turn on electrical shock through the wire of the cage to shock the mice and the rats. Then they would take them out, put them back in their new cage. For the next 7 generations of these mice and rats that had experienced this trauma of being shocked every time they smell peppermint, for the next 7 generations, all of the offspring from these rats that had that, the genetic code to fear the smell of peppermint was passed on to them. And when they would channel these rats and mice into a cage and induce the smell of peppermint, they would frantic and go panic, even though they never induced the cage with electricity. So what she's showing and teaching is that the trauma our ancestors went through, the trauma and things that we witness, our ancestors witnessed, those genetic codes were passed on to the next 7 generations. So what she's showing is, through the history from the time that we were ordered to be slaves for life by King James and the Catholic Church, I think it was Pope Innocent, our trauma has never stopped. Our trauma was horrific all the way through slavery. Every day, when slavery ended, every day we went through the same trauma. They made laws that we couldn't, more than 2 or 3 Blacks couldn't be together. That was called loitering. See, the loitering law came to keep us from getting together, because the people that have done this to us, that did this to the Africans, and if you look at my videos, all of them, from King Leopold of Belgium, he was the first one to go into South Africa with genocide. So all of this trauma has been being passed on for all of these years. All of these whites that did all of these horrific things to us, they have always lived in fear since then that we're going to come and kill them in the night. So when we were freed from slavery, their fear went off the roof. It went off the chart. Okay? And so they started making laws that we couldn't congregate in groups of more than 2. Well, it was called loitering. And for loitering, they would lock you up for 10, 15, 20 years. That's trauma. That you have separated this man from his family, his wife and his children. Okay, so what this is showing is our trauma has never stopped. When we can watch a man named George Floyd be handcuffed by the police, and a police officer kneels and puts his knee on the back of his neck and chokes him to death and kills him until he urinates on himself, until he's screaming for his mama. That trauma was passed on to his daughter, and for the next 7 generations, her offspring will have that genetic code passed on to them. That's what she is showing. That's why we have to educate ourselves, because we don't really understand why we are the way we are. We listen to too many people tell us, oh, that happened a long time ago, get over it. It's in your genetics. And if you don't do something about it to stop it, you're going to pass it on to your descendants, which will pass it on for the next 6 generations. That's how serious this is. We have to stop ignoring, though, well, I'm strong. We have to stop ignoring what we've gone through and what our ancestors have gone through and what we've witnessed in our families that we've gone through, and say, well, you know, it's okay. I'm past that now. I'm over that now. You need to watch this. Her name, and this is the video, and watch the one that is 1 minute. This one. It is 1 minute and 21 seconds. 1 hour and 21 minutes. That's the one I want you to watch.
So the question was,
listen
how
to
do
her a
you
minute.
count the slaves? Well, Southerners who, of course, enjoyed slavery, they wanted to count them. They said, yeah, count them. That gives us more power. Where the Northerners saw it as an opportunity to abolish slavery, said, well, you can't count them because you don't consider them human. How can you count people who have absolutely no freedom that you do not count or treat as human beings? So the agreed upon solution is to count 3/5 of a state's total slave population. And so as a result, they became 3/5 of a man, divested of that. But it's almost as though you're not talking about a human being anymore. And that's what's scary about this. And I always start my talks by saying that when you see folks dressed up like this, and I know y'all see a lot of them, you should get worried. I always get concerned when I see them dressed up like that, like this guy here. This next guy was someone that I struggled with. You all know him, Richard Oswald. He's the son of a Presbyterian. How wealthy he became.
Okay, I'm just giving you a couple of little clips out of here, but you please go and watch this, okay? In order for you to understand what I'm trying to show you in my presentations, we have to understand how our lives have been affected since 1619, okay? And it's not over, okay? Project 2025 is trying to bring all of that stuff back. The whole time we have been resting and sleeping and praying to the Lord. Listen, there was no such thing as Lord, G-O-D, L-O-R-D, Heavenly Father, before Hellenization. Nobody was getting down on their hands and knees and praying. All of these things were what Hellenization brought on us. Listen, we were fine, okay, before we met Jesus. We were doing great before we had a Lord. Take all of these things and say, hey man, I would like to return these to you. Okay, this is your God. This isn't my God. He's for your benefit. He isn't for my benefit. I don't have a problem saying it because I know it was made up. Okay, and if you watch these things, you will find out. See, because it's all psychology. She's a psychologist. All of this is psychology. She's a psychologist, okay? She's the expert in this field. So I'm gonna give you a couple more minutes just to see if I can find something.
You had to remove all dissonance associated with it. Can't be anything wrong with me. Certainly isn't us. We're the civilizers. We're the superior. Both in American history as well, and there is this kind of dehumanization of African people. Because you gotta ask yourself this question: how do people who deem themselves superior, who see themselves as the civilizers, who recognize themselves as what we call manifest destiny, the white man's burden of civilizing all the rest of the races, how do you reconcile being the superior being and engaging in barbaric behavior? What that produces is something called cognitive dissonance. How many people are familiar with that? Cognitive dissonance is really thinking discord. It's when you begin to feel conflict between what you believe or understand or hold to be true, and you are then faced with behaviors, either in yourself or others, that conflict with your fundamental belief. It produces cognitive dissonance. Human beings don't function well with cognitive dissonance. You must remove the cognitive dissonance in order to function. So in order for people to perpetuate slavery and to perpetuate that whole system that lasts for centuries, you had to remove all dissonance associated with it. Can't be anything wrong with me. Certainly isn't us. We're the civilizers. We're the superior, so it must be them. Oh yes, well you see, they don't even have souls. Now I can go to sleep because I'm not really dealing with a human being. Are you following me? Okay, let's see what else he said. He said, when the women and girls are taken on board a ship naked, trembling, terrified, they are often exposed to the wanton rudeness of white savages. The prey is divided upon the spot. Look at the choice of words, the prey. Resistance or refusal would be utterly in vain. And then he says, I sinned with a high hand. Yeah, and then he wrote Amazing Grace. Okay. So it's really important to understand that hand in hand with the behavior was a mindset that is so damaging.
Now, you notice what she just said, okay? This is the man that wrote Amazing Grace. The Christian song that taught you that you were a wretch. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Who taught you to call yourself a wretch? That man right there. He's the one that put that song in the church to be sang so that you felt you needed to be saved. You got to understand the psychology that's going on here. This lady right here, please go back and watch this. I'm gonna give you a couple of more minutes, but I don't have permission from her to show her material, and I don't want to be disrespectful. I think it's okay for me to show a couple of little clips or a few minutes, but just listen.
You see, I call it the secret. Not the secret that everybody's been talking about, that secret. This secret is the kind that makes you sick. How many people here are in mental health, have done direct mental health treatment with folks? If you've done you know that the secrets make us sick, yes? Isn't it the secrets that cause people the pathology? Right? How long have white people had to hold this secret? How long and how many generations had to stop and pretend Grandpa didn't do what he did? That the wealth we enjoy was not on the backs of some of these little girls. Think about how long one had to keep that secret. And the only thing you could do is either pathologize the other. It's all their fault, because it certainly wasn't great-granddad. Look how well he dresses. Do you understand what I'm saying? So when I say that this pathology goes hand in hand, I kid you not. Then you have science. And whenever we are in a process of trying to legitimize things, it's so amazing.
Okay, I'm gonna stop her video here. Please go back and watch this, okay? It'll help you grow, because it'll help you, hopefully it'll help you grow like it's helped me grow, okay? But if you listen to this with an open mind, you will be in a different place than you were before you heard it, because now you will understand yourself. None of the things that are really going on with the Black communities now is our fault. It was socially engineered. And this is the social engineering that I'm showing you. It wasn't our fault, but it is our responsibility. This system depends on ignorance and people being willing to stay in foolish things. And it tells you that in my presentation. Please go back and watch Social Engineering, the Willie Lynch Letter of How to Make a Slave. It's all there, okay? And it's been perpetually continuing for hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay, so please, watch this and try to get to understand it. I'm gonna end this video here, and I'm gonna say thanks to the new subscribers. We're still picking up some. I think we're up to 73 subscribers now. I've picked up over 100 new followers on my Facebook page. Please send me some feedback. All right, I'm gonna say Ashe. Have a blessed day.